kicks off in a seedy back alley where a couple of thugs idly pass the time by talking to each other. Our protagonist makes his way home, internally complaining about his filthy and noisy neighborhood, and arrives at his humble abode, a tiny, 180-square-foot rooftop apartment. Meet Bong Joo-yuk, a 25-year-old unemployed man juggling 3 jobs who is about to have ramen for dinner yet again. Despite his hard work, he is unable to save any money due to a crippling debt that forces him to live in misery. With no special skills and only a healthy body to his name, he eats his meal feeling hopeless about his future. And in the middle of his pathetic dinner, a system window suddenly materializes, announcing that he has awakened, which makes him freeze in utter shock, a mouthful of ramen dangling from his lips. Startled, he jolts, exclaiming in confusion at the strange phenomenon, and questions if this incredible awakening is actually happening to him. Some people consider it a blessing, a life-changing jackpot rarer than winning the lottery. However, there's a big catch. You have to survive the extremely dangerous tower to reap any of the benefits. His mind immediately goes to the worst-case scenarios, like being graphically torn apart by monsters, and facing extreme hot and cold environments, along with other gruesome ends like being poisoned or crushed by traps. He summarizes the various ways to die, making him think he should have just stuck to his part-time jobs. As a self-proclaimed loser and coward, Joo-yuk has spent his entire life avoiding confrontations and dangerous situations. He puts down his chopsticks, starting to doubt the awakening and wondering if it is just a hallucination brought on by extreme fatigue. And in a bid to confirm its reality, he calls out the command to open his status window. The window promptly appears, confirming he is not dreaming and revealing his newfound trait is summon. The awakened are granted a wide variety of traits, from common combat skills like swordsmanship to summoning and healing. Summoning is explained as an ability to utilize various beings, such as spirits, familiars, or even powerful demonic beasts. Joo-yuk's heart races with anticipation as he wonders exactly what kind of summoner he is. Eager to test his new power, he dramatically reaches out and shouts, "Summon." After nothing happens, he makes a slightly awkward hand gesture and tries to call a random summon. Still with no result, he is left standing there utterly confused, and sheepishly remembers the well-known rule that player skills do not work outside of the tower. It is common knowledge that an awakened player's abilities are only active inside the tower, while they are ordinary people in the outside world, they can only check the status window. Feeling foolish for his mistake, just as he turns away thinking about skill in outside world, a system notification pops up, impossibly confirming that random summon has been activated, and his eyes widen in disbelief as a brilliant purple light begins to fill his small apartment. A figure begins to emerge from the glowing light. Then a man clad in what looks like fantasy-style assassin's gear appear. Completely bewildered, Joo-yuk questions how the skill worked and if he actually just summoned a person. The summoned man cheerfully salutes, confirming that he is indeed a person, leaving our guy speechless. His mind struggles to process the impossible situation. He summoned a human while outside the tower. The summoned man takes a curious sniff of the air, his attention caught by a familiar scent. He excitedly identifies the smell as ramen and politely asks Joo-yuk if he can have just one bite. Joo-yuk watches in disbelief as the man happily digs in, lamenting that his first ever summon is a one-bite moocher, as his supposed one bite quickly turns into him slurping up all the noodles. He complains that the noodles are spicy, which annoys R that his summon is a moocher who has weak palate. However, Joo-yuk remains deeply confused, trying to figure out how his skill activated outside the tower and why he summoned a human. He checks his status window again and discovers his trait allows him to summon humans and demi-humans, which are classified into tiers. And the ranking system, from R to LSSR, makes him feel like he is pulling for a gacha game character. The system then informs him that his summoned being is bound by the 3 principles. And these principles dictate that the summon must protect the summoner above all else and absolutely obey his orders. And if first 2 principles conflict, then first principle takes precedence. The idea of absolute obedience sounds pretty good to Joo-yuk, and he begins to wonder who his summon is. The system reveals him to be John Kosak, an SR rank mad assassin with a 99 mission success rate, who even succeeded in assassinating a 5th Circle warlock. A sudden, overwhelming flood of information assaults his mind, and his vision distorts as he is unwillingly pulled into a memory that is not his own. He feels himself falling through a psychedelic vortex of data and becomes an observer, witnessing scenes from a chaotic and violent past. In the vision, he sees Kosak in his prime, and quickly realizes that he is watching fragments of Kosak's past life, where he showcases deadly prowess as he single-handedly slaughters his enemies. But then, a disturbing detail about the assassin's methods comes to light. Jo-yuk is horrified to see him tying festive red ribbons on the decapitated heads of his victims, cementing his mad assassin title. The assassin flashes a smug grin, clearly proud of his grotesque signature. But despite his near-perfect record, his impressive career came to an end due to a single failure. The vision shows him sneaking into a lavish room to assassinate his final target. He prepares a swift and silent attack, confident in his abilities. However, his target was the Empire's strongest swordmaster. And the memory concludes with him being effortlessly cut down, showing Jo-yuk the moment of his summon's death. Snap back to reality, Jo-yuk is startled by Kosak leaning in and asking what he is thinking about so intently. He falls backward in fear, while Kosak apologizes for startling him and asks for his orders. Terrified by the violent memories, he calms himself by remembering the principle of absolute obedience. Taking a deep breath, he decides to put it to the test, and commands Kosak to do simple chores, and the mad assassin instantly complies with dazzling speed and enthusiasm. He is stunned by his summon's efficiency and complete lack of complaint. The reality sinks in. This incredibly powerful being will do everything he says. Testing the limits, he asks if Kosak would obey even an absurd order, to which the assassin eagerly agrees. With some hesitation, he gives the ultimate test of subservience, bark for me. As Kosak's expression stiffens, seemingly taking offense at the demeaning order to act like a dog, Jo-yuk immediately regrets his words and feels a kind of fear that he may suddenly snap. But to his complete surprise, Kosak breaks into a wide grin and begins to joyfully bark and act like an excited puppy. Giving a deadpan thumbs up, Jo-yuk confirms that his summon is absolutely obedient. Their strange bonding moment is cut short by a sudden, aggressive banging on the front door. As a man shouts his name, Jo-yuk's face drains of color, because he forgot that today was the day to pay interest to the loan sharks. He frantically tells Kosak to get up and hide, and flashes back to when he had to borrow 10 million won from a loan shark since no legitimate bank would help him. The loan was a last resort to pay for his father's surgery and his younger brother's college tuition. Though he knows it was a foolish path, he clenches his lips, certain he would make the same choice again for his family. As the loan shark demands to see his face, Jo-yuk calls out to the hidden Kosak. Kosak, ever the assassin, eagerly offers to bring him the bastard's head, but Jo-yuk's ignore it. He quickly shoves him towards the bathroom, ordering him to hide and not make a sound, then has to clarify that breathing is still permitted. When he opens the door, the loan shark boss immediately grabs his neck, feigning concern over the missed interest payment, to which our guy nervously apologizes, claiming that he simply forgot to send the money and states that he just sent it. The boss offers a sinister solution, suggesting that if money is tight, Jo-yuk can always sell a kidney to solve his problems. One of the goons also chimes in that his younger brother would fetch a good price, a comment that makes Jo-yuk's blood run cold. Noticing Jo-yuk's furious expression, the boss menacingly asks if he is looking for a fight. But our guy quickly denies it, forcing a subservient smile, which makes the loan shark leave with a warning, telling him to watch himself unless he wants to disappear without a trace. After that, Kosak emerges from his hiding spot, and when Jo-yuk praises his silence, the assassin credits the order he was given. Completely drained from the day's unbelievable events, Jo-yuk briefly considers climbing the tower to pay off his debts, but quickly dismisses the thought, believing a coward like him stands no chance of survival. As Kosak asks for orders, Jo-yuk states that he does not know and offers him to unsummon if he would like to go back. Kosak, however, has a much simpler desire. He raises his hand and cheerfully asks if he can watch TV. Though confused about how his otherworldly summon knows about television, Jo-yuk sees no harm in it and agrees. And while he rests, his summon sits quietly on the floor, engrossed in a drama. Drifting off to sleep, our guy finds that having someone else in the apartment is not so bad after all. Thinking that he has been working himself to death all alone, it's almost comforting to have someone around. The next morning, Jo-yuk is woken up by his 8:30 a.m. alarm. He looks around his empty apartment and realizes Kosak must have been unsummoned during the night. And a system window confirms his suspicion, reminding him of the 6-hour duration limit he had vaguely recalled. With that, he decides to put the strange events of the previous day behind him and focus on getting ready for work. As he prepares for the day, a breaking news story about an incident at Smile Cash, the illegal lending company, catches his attention, and he drops his toothbrush in absolute shock when the news anchor reports that 3 victims at the company were found decapitated. His shock turns to dread as the anchor reveals the most bizarre detail. The severed heads were decorated with red ribbons, and the horrifying vision of Kosak gleefully tying red ribbons onto heads flashes through his mind. The sickening realization hits him: there is only one person who would do something so specific. Screaming in absolute terror, he realizes his comforting new companion is a psychopathic murderer. The morning news reports on the bizarre Smile Cash murder case, showing the gruesome, bloody aftermath at the loan shark's office. The camera lingers on the lifeless hand of the loan shark boss, his signature gold rings covered in blood. Jo-yuk spirals into a full-blown panic, convinced he's completely screwed. As a customer snaps him out of it, his trauma manifests as a horrifying hallucination of the headless loan shark holding up his own severed head, asking to be rung up. And a shock of pure terror manifests in his eyes. The nightmare worsens as the store shelves transform into a Valentine's Day display of horrors, with more severed heads looking back at him. Seeing that, he screams, recoiling in terror from the checkout counter. But the genuinely concerned customer holding a Valentine's gift asks him if he's okay. Snapping back to reality, an embarrassed Jo-yuk profusely apologizes and quickly offers to ring up her purchase. Too traumatized to continue working, he decides to take the next day off from all his part-time jobs to collect himself. Walking alone through the snow, his thoughts are consumed by the people who died, and he questions of whether their deaths were his fault. Back in the solitude of his rooftop apartment, he contemplates his next move, and pulls up the system catalog, which confirms Kosak's identity as a super rare mad assassin of the Cruel Guild. He tries to reassure himself that as the summoner, he's safe, but he can't shake the fear he feels towards him. Deciding he needs answers, he steels his nerves and initiates the designated summon for Kosak. However, an unexpected system prompt appears, catching him off guard. The system asks him to leave a satisfaction rating for Kosak based on his previous summoning. Faced with a 5-star rating system, he realizes the purpose of the previously empty satisfaction rating section in Kosak's profile. Furious that he went on to a murder spree while he was sleeping, his first instinct is to give the assassin a 1-star rating for being a pain, but then hesitates before confirming the vengeful 1-star review. Deciding he can't be that heartless, he changes his mind, and the system confirms his choice. Kosak's satisfaction rating has been officially set to 3 stars. He recalls how his mother's work taught him how heartbreaking low ratings can be, admitting he has a personal rule against ever giving 1 star. Kosak materializes in a flash of light, cheerfully saluting and reporting for duty once more. He is absolutely delighted with the 3-star review, promising to work even harder, much to Jo-yuk's disbelief. Getting straight to the point, he confronts his summon, asking directly if he killed the loan sharks. And Kosak cheerily confirms that he took care of them just before being unsummoned, which sends our guy into a state of shock. The terrifying reality that he's sharing a room with a murderer finally hits him, causing his heart to race. But he desperately tries to calm himself, clinging to the belief that the system's rules will prevent Kosak from harming him. When Jo-yuk asks how he found the loan sharks, he explains that he cleverly planted a magical tracker's marks on them when they first appeared. He is flabbergasted by the assassin's premeditation and asks why he went to such lengths. Kosak calmly justifies his actions by stating it's best to eliminate threats in advance, ignoring Jo-yuk's frantic protest that he never gave the order. The assassin explains that his actions were dictated by the 3 principles of the summoned. The system clarifies these principles. A summon must prioritize the summoner's life above all else, even if it conflicts with a direct order, and confirms this means Kosak would disobey an order to kill our guy, even if he issues it himself. Jo-yuk argues that the loan sharks weren't an actual threat, but Kosak retorts that the rules are open to his interpretation, and insists that from his perspective, they were a future threat, a line of reasoning Jo-yuk can only describe as psychotic. But then immediately apologizes for the insult, to which Kosak nonchalantly shrugs it off, admitting he hears it a lot. A cold sweat breaks out on Jo-yuk's face as he realizes the extreme danger posed by Kosak's loose interpretation of a threat. He imagines a simple scenario, walking down the street with him and accidentally bumping into a tough-looking stranger. The stranger might make an empty threat, like telling him to watch where he's going or he'll gouge his eyes out. In his mind, Kosak would interpret this as a credible threat, resulting in yet another victim decorated with a red ribbon. The terrifying thought of him putting ribbons on anyone who do so sends shivers down Jo-yuk's spine. Sensing his master's distress, Kosak suddenly drops to his knees to apologize for his actions. Jo-yuk tries to make him promise not to kill anyone again, but the assassin cleverly dodges the commitment. And, after being ordered not to kill based on mere suspicion, he eagerly salutes and promises to use his best judgment. Seeing that Kosak is being evasive, he sighs in resignation and decides to let the matter go for now. And just as he's being dismissed, Kosak brings up an important question, whether Jo-yuk has considered climbing the tower. The prospect of entering the tower, a place of immense opportunity and danger, leaves him stunned. He clenches his fist, acknowledging that challenging the tower is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to change his fate. but his resolve crumbles as he pictures the terrifying monsters within, admitting he's too scared of the danger and the risk of death. Curious, he asks Cossack if there were other summoners before him, to which he confirms he has had previous masters, remembering them as very strong and brave individuals. Comparing himself to them, Jo-yuk feels a wave of shame, admitting he doesn't have the courage to risk his life like a hero, and hangs his head in defeat, accepting what he believes that Cossack thinks that he is nothing more than a pathetic coward. To his utter astonishment, Cossack breaks into a wide grin and declares that Jo-yuk is, in fact, the greatest summoner of all, and passionately explains that a summoner's greatest virtue isn't courage, but putting safety first. He argues that a brave summoner is a liability, because if the summoner dies, the summoned being can no longer visit the outside world. With a wicked grin, he reassures his master that he will handle all the dirty work. And his final piece of advice leaves Jo-yuk dumbfounded: just lay low and live a long, long life. After a restless night spent agonizing over the decision, Jo-yuk wakes up feeling exhausted. He tries to convince himself to move on, to just be grateful that his debt collectors have been taken care of. Resolved to live a quiet life, he decides to forget about the tower and just focus on working a safe, normal job. But his moment of quiet reflection is suddenly interrupted by his phone ringing. He gets a call from his dad, who informs him that his health has taken a turn for the worse, and he requires a transfer to a larger hospital. The devastating news continues as he reveals that his mom was just fired from her job, leaving their family in a desperate situation. Putting on a brave face, our guy ends the call with a promise to visit soon, trying to hide his own despair. And as soon as he hangs up, he gets motivated by his family's crisis and puts on a construction helmet and vest, arming himself to face the tower. He steels himself with a cautious plan, take a quick peek at the first floor and retreat immediately if it seems too dangerous. Suddenly, he realizes he doesn't have to take the psychotic Cossack with him and can try summoning someone new, and fantasizes about getting lucky with a random summon, perhaps even pulling a legendary super rare grade companion. However, the system cruelly shuts down his hopes, informing him that the random summon feature is on a month-long cooldown. So in the end, he summons Cossack, who appears and enthusiastically thanks him for a 5-star rating. Jo-yuk nervously welcomes the assassin, hoping he is unaware he was just trying to replace him. He announces his decision to enter the tower but quickly clarifies it's just a trial run, a decision which Cossack wisely praises. He then dismisses Jo-yuk's makeshift weapons, assuring him that he will act as his guide and protector inside, and promises a completely safe and comfortable experience, one where Jo-yuk won't have to lift a finger. The official system prompt appears, asking if they wish to enter the first floor of Korea's Black Tower. With a determined look, Jo-yuk and an eager Cossack accept the prompt, initiating their first foray into the tower. As they are pulled inside the tower, Cossack grabs his summoner by the scruff of his neck, asking him to wait for him. And they are pulled through a digital vortex as they enter the Black Tower for the first time. The high-speed entry is a nauseating experience for the unprepared Jo-yuk, and the duo hurtles through the digital entrance, rapidly approaching the tower's first floor. They materialize inside the tower, finding themselves in a desolate wasteland protected by a hexagonal safe zone barrier. Jo-yuk surveys the barren landscape, remarking that the first floor is a complete wasteland. But the disorienting teleportation finally catches up to him, and he struggles to hold back his sickness, and fails miserably, throwing up rainbows as Cossack casually reassures him that he'll get used to it. With the introductions over, he confidently leads Jo-yuk beyond the safe zone to begin their mission. As a new player, he receives a system notification, his physical abilities have been enhanced, and his combat skills are now available. He marvels at his newfound strength, amazed at how powerful he feels even as a level 1 player. The first floor's mission appears: eliminate 5 tough-skinned fat maggots, which Cossack immediately spots in the distance. He recalls his online research, which described the maggots as durable but harmless practice dummies for new players, but also remembers reading that some players struggle for 30 minutes just to kill a single one of these creatures. Clenching his fist, he steels his resolve, telling himself he is a player now. Full of misplaced confidence, he declares he'll take one down himself, but Cossack states that he does not need to go through all these troubles. Still, our guy squares up against one of the giant, slow-moving maggots ready for his first taste of battle, and suddenly realizes he's completely unarmed and turns to borrow a weapon from Cossack. Before he can ask, however, the maggot begins to rear up, preparing to attack, and reveals its grotesque, translucent underbelly, stopping Jo-yuk in his tracks. His newfound bravery vanishes as he stares, frozen in disgust and shock at the monster before him. Abandoning all pretense of being a hero, he immediately turns and desperately calls for Cossack's help, to which our Cossack beams with pride, giving a thumbs up and praising his summoner's wise decision. Without a moment's hesitation, he unleashes his power and blitzes toward the maggots. and a single effortless punch from him is enough to make the first tough-skinned maggot explode into a shower of green goo. He tells Jo-yuk to stand back as he tears through the remaining monsters with glowing blue energy claws, and moves with blinding speed, a whirlwind of deadly slashes that the maggots are powerless to stop. For the last few, he launches a volley of sharp, blade-like projectiles made of pure energy, and unleashes his signature skill, Blade Burst. And as the remnants of the monsters rain from the sky, he remains completely unscathed, the mission already over. Jo-yuk can only watch in absolute awe, stunned by the sheer difference in their power levels, and is completely dumbfounded that he killed all the monsters in an instant. With that, a flood of notifications announces the mission's completion, a level up, a 100-gram mana stone, and an unprecedented S++ rank clear. Overjoyed by how easy it was, Jo-yuk floats in a state of bliss, already dreaming of the riches he'll acquire. However, his achievement doesn't go unnoticed. A system-wide announcement alerts a powerful-looking businesswoman to his feet. Elsewhere, an athletic woman's intense workout is interrupted by the shocking news of a new S++ ranker. Another high-ranking player receives the notification and quietly takes note. All across Korea, every player in the tower system receives the same unbelievable announcement. Having cleared the floor, the duo is instantly teleported back to Jo-yuk's apartment. Jo-yuk checks the time, flabbergasted that the entire tower expedition took only 5 minutes from start to finish. And Kosak proudly congratulates his summoner on a job well done. Our guy admits that he just stood there, but Kosak says that's exactly what a good summoner ought to do. Inspecting his rewards, Jo-yuk is fascinated by the Mana Stone and a mysterious wing-shaped platinum badge. Mana Stones are an essential resource in the modern world, powering countless industries. Thanks to players constantly clearing the tower, basic knowledge is widespread, and he knows his 100-gram stone is worth about 50,000 won. While he understands the value of the Mana Stone, he has never heard of a platinum badge and has no idea what it does. Pushing the mystery aside, Jo-yuk celebrates his quick earnings while Kosak looks forward to catching up on his favorite dramas. To celebrate their success, Jo-yuk orders a feast of jokbal for dinner. Remembering Kosak's extreme aversion to spicy food, he reassures his paranoid assassin that he ordered the regular, non-spicy version. Kosak thanks him with old-fashioned formality, prompting Jo-yuk to ask him to relax and speak normally. Curious, he asks about Kosak's archaic way of speaking, and the assassin explains he picked it up from a previous summoner, which Jo-yuk finds hilarious, internally comparing it to someone picking up the habits of an ex-partner. And as Kosak offers to stop speaking that way if it bothers him, Jo-yuk erupts in laughter, finding it too funny to give up. Sharing a meal and a laugh, Jo-yuk revises his opinion, deciding that maybe this seemingly psychopathic assassin isn't so dangerous after all. And with a newfound sense of confidence in his powerful companion, he considers it to be doable. The next morning, he is ready to put his new plan for success into action, and tapes a new schedule to his wall, titled, A Real Man's Daily Routine. His flawless plan involves quitting his grueling day labor job to focus on his 2 part-time jobs and clearing the tower with Kosak in his free time. Kosak is ecstatic to receive another perfect satisfaction score from Jo-yuk, who is just happy that his summon is satisfied, which prompts Jo-yuk to ask why the satisfaction rating is so important to him. Kosak explains that a higher rating leads to direct upgrades, increasing things like his summon time and rank. With that, they enter the 2nd floor of the Black Tower. And the mission for this floor is to eliminate 10 nimble fat maggots, a slightly tougher version of the first floor's enemies. Jo-yuk notices these maggots are trickier because they are much more mobile, and he nervously warns Kosak not to overdo it, but the assassin confidently vows he won't die. In fact, he smugly promises to clear the entire floor in 3 minutes, tops. Powering up his blades, he prepares for another quick clear so he can escort his master home. Getting into it, Jo-yuk shouts that if they finish fast, they can celebrate with chicken tonight, which greatly motivates Kosak, and he powers up even more, shouting a heartfelt thank you. Just like before, the battle is over in an instant as Kosak's energy blades obliterate the nimble maggots, which leaves our guy stunned once again, having completed the mission and earned another S++ rank and platinum badge. Realizing how incredibly fast and efficient their clears are, he figures he can pop in and out of the tower before his morning shift even starts. Hence, the duo continues their rapid ascent, with Kosak cheekily critiquing Jo-yuk's landing as they enter the 3rd floor. And in a montage of victories, they clear the 3rd floor, earning yet another S++ rank. With that, the 4th floor is completed just as easily, with our assassins striking a proud pose. They cap off their run by clearing the 5th floor and sharing a celebratory high five. After accumulating 5 S++ grade platinum badges in a row, Jo-yuk is shocked to receive a notification that he's been awarded a special perk. The system reveals his new perk is Awakening Trait Enhancement, which increases the number of player simultaneous summons from 1 to 2. Reviewing his status window, Jo-yuk sees his level has risen to 6 and, most importantly, that he now has the ability to have 2 concurrent summons. The realization dawns on him, he can bring another person along, though he acknowledges Kosak is more than capable of handling things alone. He then marvels at the incredible rewards that come from achieving an S rank, calling them the best, and visualizes a long-term strategy, seeing himself playing it safe while his summons do all the dangerous work. With over 20 days left on his random summon cooldown, he resolves to survive carefully until then, and excitedly plans to keep climbing the tower, envisioning himself slacking off while his 2 powerful summons clear the floors. The scene shifts to the Korean Awakening Management Department in Hanamdong, Seoul. Inside an executive office, several high-ranking officials sit in a tense, silent meeting. Team leader Jeon Gwang-il internally debates the best time to post the new tower clear announcement to maximize its impact. Manager Lee Mina, seemingly reading his mind, asks if he's thinking about the announcement, startling him, which makes him scold Mina for prying into his mind, but she replies that she can't help being curious, and formally reports that another S-rank clear has been posted, this time for the 6th floor of the Black Tower in Korea. He observes that since someone has been clearing floors 1 through 5 in order, it must be the work of a single person, and concludes they are dealing with a player of unprecedented, incredible talent who could potentially clear every floor with an S rank. Moments later, the director of the Awakening Management Department slams his hand on the table, commanding their full attention, and states that before this, the highest rank ever recorded in Korea was an A, and they have only just learned of ranks beyond that. He warns that player migration and even kidnappings have become common, and that they risk losing this phenomenal player to another country, and urgently declares their top priority: they must find this S player right now. He gives the order to closely monitor all newly registered players before the story jumps forward 2 days. Back at Jo-yuk's apartment, a domesticated Kosak cheerfully washes dishes while confirming they are tackling the 8th floor today, which makes our guy note that the first 10 floors are considered the beginner zone, which explains their smooth progress. The duo then enters the misty, forest-like environment of the 8th floor, and their mission is to defeat 10 red thorn frog warriors, which immediately swarm them from all sides. As a frog warrior launches its long, purple tongue in a surprise attack, Kosak's blade flashes into action to intercept it. With a graceful and deadly efficiency, he carves through the entire mob of frog monsters in an instant, and the system announces the mission is complete, awarding Jo-yuk another S rank and a platinum badge. Back home, Kosak celebrates another floor cleared, while Jo-yuk sheepishly admits he didn't do a thing. Jo-yuk gratefully thanks him for making the climb so easy, and Kosak reminds him to stay vigilant for the higher floors. Wanting to reward his summon, he offers him some money to go out and have fun, but Kosak flatly refuses, stating he can't leave his side, much to his surprise that the principle of absolute obedience doesn't apply here. And when he suggests ordering chicken instead, our assassin enthusiastically agrees, comically donning a chicken hat. Kosak places the order for chicken and sweet flavor and waits patiently in a full chicken costume. Our guy receives a new reward, a tower-exclusive healing potion, and decides he should probably give it to Kosak. He then inspects his haul of mana stones, calculating their worth around 1.8 million won, and realizing he needs to figure out how to cash them in. On day 10 of their tower climb, the pair prepares to raid the 10th floor. Jo-yuk stretches, lamenting his part-time job and reflecting on how diligently they've been clearing a floor each day. He notes how easily Kosak cleared the 9th floor, making the S-clear reward feel like a simple bonus. And temporarily forgetting Kosak is a psychopathic murderer, he raises a toast to his incredibly reassuring skills and begins to summon him, as he gives Kosak a perfect satisfaction rating, which rewards his summon by increasing his devotion time by 1 hour. Overflowing with joy, Kosak thanks him warmly, pledging to serve the extra hour and insisting that Jo-yuk can trust only him. And as they enter the 10th floor, the system announces that their physical abilities are now enhanced to match their level. Stepping past the entrance barrier into the forest of the 10th floor, Jo-yuk immediately feels the change. He feels a surge of overflowing power and magic as the tower readjusts his physical abilities. In a moment of pure delusion, Jo-yuk comically wonders if he has become an untamable wild horse. And tapping Kosak on the shoulder, he announces that he's going to help fight from now on. However, Kosak vehemently objects, claiming he would have to kill himself if his summoner got even a single scratch. Jo-yuk insists, determined to contribute this time. But his train of thought is abruptly cut short as he stares in terror at a massive, glowing eye. A giant praying mantis, the 10th floor's monster, reveals its terrifying form, and the sheer size of the 10th floor monster freezes his body. He panics, wondering how other players could have possibly defeated something so intimidating. And he begins to feel that two of them fighting a mere bug would be demeaning to their human pride, much to Kosak's confusion. As the giant mantis lets out a furious shriek, ready to attack, all thoughts of fighting forgotten, Jo-yuk immediately relegates himself to the role of Kosak's personal cheerleader. But Kosak stands his ground as the colossal monster looms over him, preparing to strike. In the next moment, the assassin leaps into action, expertly dodging the mantis's massive size with incredible speed. With a look of intense focus, he prepares his deadly counterattack, and unleashes a web of glowing blue slashes, dicing the giant insect into pieces in the blink of an eye. Once again, the system announces an S rank, a level up, and another platinum badge for completing the 10th floor. As Kosak declares the mission complete, a notification confirms they can now challenge the 11th floor. With their daily climb done, the system confirms they have exited the Black Tower. Jo-yuk tallies up his rewards, noting an additional 1 kdrams of mana stones for a total of 5.5 kdram, and a bonus of 5 platinum badges. Now, having accumulated a total of 10 platinum badges, he has been awarded another new perk, which makes our guy grin with anticipation, eagerly wondering what his powerful new perk will be. The system reveals his new perk, the ability to copy one skill from his summon, presenting a long list of Kosak's deadly abilities. Before Jo-yuk can even process the options, Kosak urgently insists that he must learn Shadow Step, and explains that Shadow Step is the perfect escape skill, allowing him to run away quickly and secretly if anything happens. Hearing that, Jo-yuk puts on a brave face, questioning if he thinks he is the kind of person who would run away just to save his own skin. But despite his momentary posturing, he immediately selects Shadow Step, and the system confirms the skill has been learned. He then tries to justify his choice, seriously telling Kosak that good footwork is the key to any fight. Eager to test it out in real life, he activates Shadow Step, but finds it's just an instant step, a quick dash rather than a magical teleport. Exhausted from the attempt, he collapses and complains about the inconsistency of the game's rules, to which Kosak simply agrees. On day 11, after much hesitation, a blushing Jo-yuk nervously makes a phone call. Blushing and stammering, he introduces himself to the Awakening Management Department and reports that he has awakened as a player, to which the call center representative congratulates him and offers to send government agents to his house, an offer which he accepts. Drained from the effort, he reflects that making that call was the most courageous decision of his entire 25-year life. Meanwhile, Minna walks towards a waiting government car at the department headquarters. Gwang-il asks her about the individual who contacted yesterday. She replies that it does not seem that they are behind S records, to which he expresses frustration that the S player still hasn't shown up. She informs him about the new Awakening application they just received and invites him to come along to check it out. He agrees, and determines to find the S player and shower them with every benefit the department can offer. Back at his apartment, Jo-yuk is in a frenzy, frantically cleaning up before the government officials arrive. And as a knock at the door announces the arrival of the Awakening Management Department, he braces himself, and opens the door and politely invites them into his home. As Gwang-il introduces them, he becomes even more nervous upon seeing that a woman is present and stammers out his own name. Mina suddenly steps forward, getting uncomfortably close to a blushing and flustered Jo-yuk, and with confidence, she looks him straight in the eye and questions him if he is the S-Awakener. Caught completely off guard by the accusation, Jo-yuk lets out a startled shriek as his composure instantly shatters. His mind races in a panic. How could she possibly have found out? Is there some secret detection method he's unaware of? Deciding denial is his only option, he steels himself, determined to act as naturally as possible. Putting on a terrible robotic act, he stiffly denies being the S-ranker, claiming he has only heard rumors about them. But Manager Minna is completely unimpressed, immediately recognizing his awkward demeanor and stiff speech as textbook signs of lying. But Gwang-il quickly intervenes, chopping his subordinate on the head and scolding her for being too aggressive. After apologizing for his partner's rudeness, he confirms they were just probing, much to Jo-yuk's relief and continued suspicion. Before the questioning can continue, a mandatory informational video begins, introducing Tavi, the adorable mascot of Korea's Black Tower, explaining how the ominous jet black towers mysteriously appeared all over the world 20 years ago, and the humanity's initial attempts to investigate the towers, all of which failed as an invisible barrier repelled every physical attack. The tower's true nature was only revealed with the appearance of players who could enter and advance through its game-like floors. And while players are normal people on the outside, they gain powerful abilities inside the tower, using rewards to become stronger and boost the global economy. And if a nation's climbing progress is too sluggish, a terrifying tower collapse countdown is initiated. And if an upper floor isn't climbed within 6 months of the countdown start, the tower in that nation will inevitably collapse. Tabby provides a grim example, revealing that the city of Mumbai, India, was completely wiped out by a tower collapse 3 years prior. The mascot then shifts focus to South Korea, noting the country is fortunate to have only one black tower, located in the mountains of Gangwon province. And despite its relatively small player base, Korea's progress is top tier, currently at the 65th floor, second only to the US at 66. The video portrays players as modern-day heroes and explorers who safeguard society by venturing into the Black Tower, and concludes with an encouraging recruitment message, urging newly awakened individuals to register as official players and become heroes. As the video ends, Kwang-il gets back to business, informing an annoyed Ju-yuk that they will now proceed with verification questions. Kwang-il confirms that if Ju-yuk is an awakened player, and Ju-yuk presents his collected mana stones, casually stating he has reached the 10th floor. His mention of the 10th floor immediately sets off alarm bells for them, as is the exact floor of the recent S record. Mina's eyes narrow as her suspicion grows stronger by the second. Testing her theory, she directly asks Jo-yuk if he has heard about the recent public announcements that has been trending. Jo-yuk once again attempts to play it cool, offering a thumbs up and an awkward laugh as he feigns ignorance about the S-ranker's identity. His forced grin and convulsing thumb do nothing to ease their suspicions. Instead, they only make him look more guilty. Kwang-il moves on to explain the terms of their contract, detailing how the government divides players into two groups, the elite team and the general team. He clarifies that general team players are essentially freelancers who plan and execute their own raids independently. The elite team, however, works closely with the government, receiving benefits like personal protection in exchange for tackling higher-level clears. The mention of a basic annual salary for the elite team makes Ju-yuk worry about the attention he would receive if they discovered his S record. He imagines a terrifying future where he is hounded by the media asking invasive questions about his personal life. And the thought of being the center of attention is so horrifying that he vehemently rejects the idea in his mind. Kwang-il adds another condition for the elite team. They must film their raids with a provided body camera, a deal-breaker for Jo-yuk. Without a moment's hesitation, he firmly declares that he will not be applying for the elite team, stunning him. Wringing his hands, he explains that he is perfectly happy with the general team's conditions and claims to have no talent. Putting up a sheepish smile, he tells them that he is content to stop at a reasonable floor and collect modest rewards because climbing higher is too scary. And despite Kwang-il's attempt to make him reconsider, Jo-yuk insists his mind is made up, to which manager Mina sighs, realizing their lead on the S-ranker has hit another dead end. She internally fumes, thinking that someone so ungrateful and blatant about their lack of ambition doesn't deserve such power. She concludes that even if he had volunteered, his attitude would make him unsuitable, because the most important quality for the elite team is the will to climb. Respecting his wishes, Kwang-il accepts the decision. Relieved to have avoided the spotlight, Jo-yuk stammers out a thank you. For the final step of his registration, he asks our guy if he would mind entering the tower right then and there to confirm his awakening, and subtly suggests clearing a floor while he's at it, prompting Jo-yuk to realize they are still testing him for the S achievement. He agrees to clear a floor but lies, claiming it might take him up to 2 hours to throw them off his trail. However, Mina says it is fine. Pleasantly smiling, she tells him to take his time, as they will be waiting patiently for his return. With the plan set, he prepares to enter the tower under the watchful eyes of the two government agents, and casually invites them to watch TV and help themselves to drinks. And as he vanishes before their eyes, Kwang-il confirms that he is definitely an awakened and turns to his partner and asks for her assessment. Mina dismisses his potential. While she cannot judge his talent, she says, he seems far too timid and will likely give up on the 11th floor. Because the 11th floor tests a player's fear by pitting them against long-tailed giant centipedes, which are not strong but are terrifying in number. The challenge requires killing 100 of the hideous creatures, a task she believes someone as timid as him could not possibly handle. Then she confidently predicts that he will simply give up and return to the safe zone, a conclusion he finds plausible given her track record. Trusting his partner's sharp intuition, he sighs in resignation and prepares to call his chief to report another failed lead. Inside the 11th floor, Jo-yuk's attempt to summon and John Cossack is designated once again. He appears with a cheerful salute, happy to have been summoned for another mission with his master. And the mission objective appears: eliminate 100 long-tailed giant centipedes within a 3-hour time limit. The mission objective appears: Eliminate 100 long-tailed giant centipedes within a 3-hour time limit, which our assassin believes will take about 5 minutes. But our guy quickly stops him, ordering to hunt as slowly as possible and take over an hour to avoid another clear record, to which Cossack gives a knowing thumbs up, understanding the need for discretion with the agents watching from the outside. With his instructions delivered, Joyuk grins maniacally, convinced his plan to create a terrible clear time will finally free him from suspicion. However, he immediately begins dispatching the centipedes with blinding speed. His version of slows is still absurdly fast. Panicked by the pace, Joyuk desperately yells at him to hunt them even slower, which the assassin cheerfully agrees to do. Therefore, his hunting speed becomes marginally slower, but as Joyuk tries to keep his distance, a giant centipede bursts from the ground beneath him, launching him into the air. Absolute terror fills his face as he realizes his carefully laid plan is falling apart in the most gruesome way possible. Frozen by fear and surrounded by monsters, his body refuses to listen, leaving him unable to use a skill to escape. Sensing his master's distress, Cossack's demeanor instantly shifts from playful to deadly serious. Forgetting all previous orders, he launches himself through the air, vowing to rescue his summoner. Enraged that the hideous centipede bastards dared to threaten his master, he unleashes a devastating attack. In a flash of light and steel, his attack annihilates the entire swarm of centipedes in an instant. Joyuk lands safely but can only watch in horror as the tide of battle turns, shouting for his summon to wait, and yells for him to go slowly, but it's too late. The assassin is moving far too fast, prioritizing his master's safety above all else. While vowing to obey the order to slow down, he declares that his summoner's safety is the top priority. Our guy realizes with dawning horror that if John keeps this up, the outcome is inevitable. And just as he feared, the system announces he has achieved an S rank for clearing the 11th floor. Disappointed by the outcome, he resigns to his fate and is enveloped in light as he exits the Black Tower. Back in the apartment, manager Minna checks the time. It has been 5 minutes, and she expects him to emerge in defeat at any second. Suddenly, a system announcement flashes into existence proclaiming an S rank clear for the 11th floor and shocking both agents. At that exact moment, Joyuk materializes back in his apartment, his return perfectly timed with the announcement. The agents stare in disbelief as Mina confirms that the S rank for the 11th floor appeared the very moment Player Bong showed up. There is no room for doubt. The man standing before them is the S ranker. Letting out a heavy sigh, he laments that he did not want to resort to this, his expression turning grim. With his identity exposed and Cossack manifesting behind him with daggers drawn, he declares that the two agents will have to be silenced. At his master's command, Cossack launches himself toward the unsuspecting agents. As he closes in, Joyuk gives the order to bind Jathem immediately, but Cossack cut off their heads before Joyuk can finish his sentence. He begins to scream as he sees their heads on the ground. Panicked by the scene, he yells that he never said anything about beheading them. But the agents' severed heads, adorned with red ribbons, begin to profusely apologize for discovering his secret. Snapping back to reality, Joyuk's sudden outburst leaves them confused, and seeing him drenched in a cold sweat, they wonder if he is alright. After composing himself, Joyuk is once again pressured by Guang Yil, who insists the elite team desperately needs a player of his talent. But our guy attempts one last desperate lie, claiming his 11th floor run must have coincidentally overlapped with another player's S achievement. The agent remains skeptical of the perfectly timed coincidence, but Joyuk clumsily sticks to his story. Giving up, he concedes and pulls out a contract to finalize his registration. Joyuk is horrified to see it's an elite contract, protesting that he specifically requested a standard one. But Guan Yil explains this isn't just any contract, but a one-of-a-kind offer on a completely different level. And the document is revealed to be an ultra-elite contract, designating him a priority management subject. The contract offers unimaginable perks, including a 12 billion won annual salary, real estate, and VVIP security. And to his astonishment, the ultimate benefit is full legal immunity, effectively placing him above the law. Joyuk realizes this contract would grant him a status akin to royalty, a privilege held only by Korea's #1 player, Yoo Cheolmin. But despite the life-changing offer, which includes every benefit the nation can provide, Joyuk flatly refuses. He emphatically insists he will only sign a regular contract, refusing to be treated as a special player. When questioned about his bizarre refusal, he simply states that he doesn't like receiving attention, and recalls fleeing a clothing store just because the staff tried to help, illustrating his aversion to being noticed. In another flashback, he vows to never visit a convenience store again after the clerk recognized him as a regular. The agents conclude he is just extremely introverted, while he continues to make excuses about the future being uncertain. Respecting his wishes, a slightly disappointed Gwang Il agrees to prepare a standard contract instead. Jo Yuk justifies the decision to himself, reasoning that an elite contract comes with the heavy weight of responsibility. He understands that by joining the elite team, designed to conquer the tower, he could never quit, and the elite team was made solely to conquer upper floor. Firm in his choice to avoid that pressure, he walks away, content with simply making a better living than before. Meanwhile, at the headquarters for the Awakening Management Department, a debriefing is about to begin. Director Park Kyung-soo questions team leader Jian about his report, finding it hard to believe such a timid player could achieve incredible feats. Gwang Il confirms the report. Director Park says he doesn't understand the contradiction either and concludes that his personality is simply unique, and muses that Jo Yuk is perfectly an ordinary citizen in stark contrast to his extraordinary abilities. As director asks, is there any chance you have mistaken him for someone else? Mina assures the director there is no mistake, as the timing of the tower clears perfectly matches his entry. Frustrated but resolute, Director Park slams his desk and orders them to recruit him for the elite team no matter what it takes. Gwang Il accepts the order with determination, vowing they will get him on the team. Back in his apartment, a fuming Jo Yuk continues to rant about the contract, making it clear his refusal is absolute. He then turns his anger on Kosak, reprimanding him for his earlier insubordination and threatening to unsummon him if he disobeys again. Entering the 12th floor, the duo faces a new mission: eliminate 20 icicle spear weasels in a frozen wasteland. Before they begin, he sternly reminds Kosak to proceed gently and slowly to avoid another S rank. Trusting that the polite and obedient Kosak will finally follow orders, he feels confident his plan to seem average will succeed, and thinks if they clear 12th floor normally, the Awakening Management Department will lose interest on them. His confidence immediately shatters, however, as the intense, freezing temperature of the floor hits him like a physical blow. He knows that he was prepared for it, but it is colder than he thought, and as he shivers violently in the cold, Kosak notices his master's face turning alarmingly pale. Panicked at the sight of his summoner suffering, he misinterprets the situation as a life-threatening emergency and vows to end it quickly. Ignoring Jo Yuk's desperate cries to take it slow, the overprotective assassin springs into action, and reasons that his master might catch a cold, which he considers an incurable, life-threatening disease. Jo Yuk orders him that he must obey him, but in a flash, the monsters are obliterated. And to Jo Yuk's despair, another system-wide S announcement is broadcast. His phone immediately rings. It's Gwang Il, who incredulously asks if he just cleared the 12th floor, but our guy adds that the 13th floor might be difficult. Back in his warm apartment, a cheerful Kosak reports that his master is safe, completely oblivious to the chaos he has caused. Furious at the repeated disobedience, he unsummons Kosak as punishment before he can even finish speaking about TV, and questions who does he think he is to watch TV, and also declines any soup for those who don't obey. Next day, the duo enters the 13th floor, a treacherous, trap-filled corridor. Concerned that the numerous traps might lead to Jo Yuk getting hurt, Kosak decides to take matters into his own hands by preventing him from getting into these traps. Ignoring his master's protests, he scoops him up and sprints through the hall, instantly clearing the floor and triggering yet another S notification. Moving on to the 14th floor, they face a swarm of giant eyeball bats, and Kosak again moves to eliminate them before they can pose a threat. And Jo Yuk can only watch in silence as his S streak continues, finally giving up and deciding to just let things happen as they may. Back home, he checks his bank account and sees a deposit of nearly 5 million won from Mana Stone sales and the general player support funds. He calculates his total earnings from floors 11 through 14, including the Mana Stones he received as rewards, and is stunned to realize he has made over 7 million won in just 2 weeks of being a player. Dreaming of a 30 million won monthly salary, he joyfully decides to quit all of his part-time jobs. The next day, Kosak prostrates himself before him, expressing overwhelming gratitude for being rated a perfect 5 despite his insubordination. Having given up on his plan, Jo Yuk simply tells him to take it easy from the 15th floor onward, and Kosak confirms if that's really okay. Accepting that his secret is out, our guy focuses on the bright side. One more S rank will earn him 15 platinum badges. And a greedy smile spreads across his face as he anticipates unlocking another powerful perk to make him even safer. Re-energized, Jo Yuk and an enthusiastic Kosak enter the 15th floor, ready to take on the goblin workers, as the mission requires them to eliminate 20 goblin workers. The duo stealthily approaches a group in a dense forest. Jo Yuk observes that since these are his first humanoid monsters with some intelligence, clearing the next floors will become more difficult and require more information. Kosak warns that goblins are cunning and will call for help if even one escapes, advising his master to hide well. and with a confident smile, he declares his intention to eliminate them all in a single, decisive strike. With that, he activates a stealth skill, making Jo-yuk wonder if he could learn a skill like that himself. In a blur of motion, the invisible assassin darts through the unsuspecting goblin ranks, and they are cut down before they can even perceive the attack, instantly completing the floor's mission. True to form, they achieve another S rank and receive their 15th platinum badge, which allows them to challenge the 16th floor, and hence they begin to teleport out of the tower and rematerialize in the middle of the apartment. Without missing a beat, Jo-yuk opens his system inventory to check on his rewards, as he triumphantly summons his collection of 15 platinum badges, which float in the air around him. A system notification announces that he has been awarded with a new perk, leaving him to wonder what incredible ability he's unlocked this time. In the next scene, after accumulating 15 platinum badges, he is awarded a new perk, an energy barrier kit, which materializes as a simple golden bracelet, leaving him to wonder what exactly an energy barrier is. Upon equipping the bracelet, a system window explains that it provides a damage-absorbing barrier that scales with his level, though it has a 5-hour cooldown. And activating the item, he's enveloped in a glowing blue shield and realizes it's essentially full-body armor that isn't restricted to the tower. He excitedly confirms that the barrier works in the real world, giving him a powerful new defensive tool. But then his mind immediately goes to money as he fantasizes about selling the powerful item for billions and quitting his dangerous new life as a player. Deciding that higher floors promise even better rewards, he eagerly asks John Cossack about clearing floor 1/6, only to be told that an S rank is no longer a guarantee. Taken aback by the uncertainty, Jo-yuk is left wondering how to proceed, and silently debates whether should he sell the valuable bracelet or risk climbing higher. Meanwhile, at the Awakening Management Department, Director Park asks how long it's been since Jo-yuk's last S-clear. Lee Mina reports that it's been 15 days, and the team leader explains that Bong is stuck on the 15th floor. The director slams his fist in frustration, lamenting that such a powerful and talented player is also so incredibly timid. However, Jian remains hopeful, suggesting they wait a little longer since the difficulty increases greatly from floor 16 onwards. Their conversation is interrupted by a message announcing that Jo-yuk is on his way to the department to use the player shop. Park is shocked by the news, but a sudden realization dawns on him. He deduces that Jo-yuk wasn't stuck, but is strategically repeating floor 15 to farm funds for better items. That seems to be the case. He was empty-handed when they visited their home. Feeling foolish, the director regrets almost criticizing him without understanding his clever preparations. He immediately orders his team to support Jo-yuk with any items he wants at a low price, as the scene flashes back to 15 days ago. In the flashback, Cossack is utterly horrified by a strange request from his master. With a straight face, Jo-yuk lifts his shirt and calmly tells his panicked summon to stab him with a dagger. Cossack questions why he is doing this to him, and our guy explains that he's not asking to be killed, but just wants to test if his new energy barrier works properly. But the assassin adamantly refuses, pretending he can't hear the insane demand. Frustrated, Jo-yuk takes matters into his own hands, grabbing his dagger and stabbing himself. But then, while screaming in pain, he realizes that he forgot to turn on the barrier, while a furious Cossack vows to cut off the evil arm that harmed his master. After the self-stabbing and a stern lecture from Cossack, he wearily sends him back to hunting monsters. And Cossack obediently resumes his lightning-fast slaughter of the floor's monsters. Our guy observes that no matter the floor, Cossack's hunts are always over in about 10 minutes. With some downtime, he decides it's a good opportunity to practice his acquired skills, and prepares to use the skill he copied from Cossack, Shadow Step. An ethereal blue glow envelops him as he activates the assassin's movement ability, and surges through the forest, leaving after images in his wake as he gets a feel for the skill. Amazed by the sensation of moving at superhuman speed, he zips around freely, now understanding why Cossack insisted it was the perfect skill for escaping danger. But while practicing, his momentum carries him straight into an unseen obstacle in the bushes, and he comes face to face with a lone goblin. Shocked to encounter, he wonders if it was hiding from Cossack. But the goblin doesn't give him any chance to think, and lets out a piercing shriek and lunges forward. On pure instinct, Jo-yuk throws up his arms and activates the energy barrier, successfully blocking the strike. And while getting goosebumps, he kicks the creature away in disgust. As Cossack notices the goblin flying towards him, he intercepts it, casually complimenting his nice pass. However, just as he realizes that our guy was in danger before, he dashes towards him at an incredible speed, and asks if Jo-yuk is alright, immediately scolding him for daring to fight a goblin and sniffing him for injuries, and launches into a loud lecture about recklessness, prompting Jo-yuk to cover his ears in annoyance. After 2 weeks of farming the 15th floor, he has grown accustomed to his skills and amassed 22.5 kilograms of mana stones, worth 11.25 million won. Back in the present, he calls the Awakening Management Department to use their shop and is surprised when they insist on sending a car for him. A luxurious limousine brings him to the department, and stepping out of the car, he is personally greeted by team leader Jian, who gives him a grand welcome, leaving him feeling overwhelmed by the unexpected VIP treatment. After that, inside the department, he registers his vein information for secure access, and Jian states that he can come anytime he wants and offers him to give a tour of the player shop, but a nervous Jo-Yuk declines, opting to look around on his own. As he enters the exclusive high-tech player shop for the first time, he's awestruck by the luxurious interior, but finds it strange that he is the only customer present. And suspecting the items are too expensive, he decides to sell his collected mana stones first. The clerk values his haul at 11.25 million won and informs him the funds are available for immediate use. Finding shopping to be a drag, he just wants to buy something and go home. Unbeknownst to him, Director Park is monitoring his visit, and Jian confirms the shop was closed to all other players just for him, and reveals he ordered the staff to give him a 90% discount, reasoning that the timid player might refuse the items if they were offered for free. And the day ends as the sun sets over his rooftop apartment. Back home, he proudly shows off his new adamant mace, purchased for a mere 2 million won, and he also acquired a pair of basilisk leather boots for the low price of 3 million won. Which shocks him, knowing that items of this quality usually cost tens of millions, and he's also amazed when he was welcomed by Jian, and the obvious special treatment makes him deeply uncomfortable, though he can't help but admire his new boots. Admiring the boots which work as armor, he reminds himself that his real defense is the energy barrier perk, which unifies all his defenses into one, which is all thanks to the perks. He then admits to himself that while he initially planned not to be greedy, the allure of the tower's perks is proving too tempting. The following day, he summons Kosak and declares that they will finally challenge the 16th floor. A sly smile creeps across his face as he realizes his summon skill has finally come off its cooldown, which makes our assassin a bit confused. Hoping for a sane and useful ally, Jo-Yuk prays to every deity he can think of as he prepares to summon one more. And with a nervous shout of abracadabra, he activates the random summon skill. With that, a massive pillar of violent purple energy erupts in his small apartment, signaling the arrival of a new entity. Both of them stare in wide-eyed shock as the powerful silhouette of the new summon begins to levitate, and crashes straight into the ceiling. Staring in abject horror, Jo-Yuk is filled with dread, wondering what monstrous being he has just unleashed, and fears he's just lost his apartment's security deposit. As the body of the summon begins to materialize, our guy takes a step back, and wondering if he has summoned a human or a monster. And before he can react, John Kosak leaps into action, launching a flying kick at the new arrival, and connects it squarely with the barbarian's face. After that, he unleashes a furious barrage of blows, screaming at the newcomer for ruining Jo-Yuk's life, while the summoner wonders if they somehow know each other. The barbarian, however, is completely unfazed, stating that the powerful attacks merely tickle him. Enraged, Kosak draws his twin daggers, threatening to take the barbarian's head and tie a pretty ribbon on it for him. And just as he lunges in for the kill, Jo-Yuk desperately yells for them to stop. Crying about the cost of repairs, he begs him to calm down, lamenting that one broken ceiling is more than enough. After that, he asks Kosak to step outside, but the assassin insists it is unnecessary, claiming the new summon is an infamous idiot who doesn't even know the 3 principles, to which the barbarian replies that he knows 3 principles. And when Kosak demands to recite them, the flustered barbarian tries and fails, mangling them into nonsensical rules about life and conflict. Hence, our assassin declares the barbarian a dud and insists they kill him to trigger a 100-day resummoning penalty, a rule Jo-Yuk had no idea existed. Checking the system window, Jo-Yuk confirms he has summoned an R-rank dull barbarian meat shield, the lowest rank possible, and contemplates waiting a month to try again. During a comical interview, the barbarian cannot remember his name, his purpose, or anything about the tower, frustrating our guy with his constant answer of "dunno." Deciding to read the detailed description for answers, Jo-Yuk is suddenly struck by a jolt of psychic energy, and his consciousness is pulled away as he realizes he is being drawn into the new summon's memories, just as what happened with Kosak. He finds himself in a vibrant, sunlit meadow and wonders where he is. He then notices the barbarian in his prime, a pure being from the Great Plains tribe who found simple happiness in nature. However, his purity aside, his physical abilities were top-notch. That being said, he was far too dim-witted. And his simple life changes when he is approached by a smirking, blonde-haired man who remarks on his enormous size. The man introduces himself as Arius, but the barbarian, unable to remember his own name, simply says he forgot it. Deceived by the fake hero Arius, the trusting barbarian was set up as a meat shield against the monstrous arch-fiend Hydra. However, using only his powerful body, he withstood the Hydra's acidic breath, tearing off its heads one by one, oblivious to his own skin melting away. Hence he met his demise, dissolved by acid, all to protect the comrades who cruelly jeered at the idiots who had won the battle for them. Jo-yuk watches in horror as only the barbarian's skeleton remains, and he finally understands the tragic meaning behind the title, Meat Shield. Overcome with emotion, he curses, deciding that it doesn't matter if his new summon is a little dumb, and welcomes him with open arms and declares that they will climb the tower together. Deciding to name him first, he offers a choice between Barber and Meatball, but the summon still doesn't know which to pick. But when pressed for an answer, he thoughtfully chooses the name Meatball. And Jo-yuk makes a promise to his new companion, telling him not to worry and that he will make him happy, to which Meatball agrees to trust and follow his new summoner. After that, he cheerfully announces that he, Cossack, and Meatball are all comrades now, much to Cossack's utter shock. However, a light bulb goes off over Cossack's head as a new calculation is completed, and he quickly changes his tune, agreeing that Meatball is a reliable meat shield whom he will personally train, and the group decides to enter the 16th floor. With that, our guy reflects on his bizarre new party, a timid player, a mad assassin, and a simple-minded meat shield, while Cossack scolds Meatball for copying him. And the newly formed team enters the 16th floor of the Black Tower, where their abilities are restored and combat skills are now available. With his two summons by his side, Jo-yuk braces himself, determined to make this unconventional team work. And this time, their mission is to eliminate 30 goblin scouts. As they make their way through the forest, Cossack immediately advises him to activate his barrier and prepare Shadow Step to escape. He then warns that the goblins shoot poison darts and could appear from anywhere, unaware that they are already surrounded. Moments later, from the shadows, a goblin takes aim at an unsuspecting Jo-yuk and fires a poison dart directly at him. But before the dart can hit its mark, Cossack's hand shoots out, catching it just inches from his face. Realizing they have walked into an ambush, the party is suddenly swarmed by dozens of goblins. As Jo-yuk dodges, our assassin swiftly intercepts the incoming projectiles, yelling that he will block them. Seeing no end to the goblins' projectiles, and with the situation escalating, Jo-yuk shouts for Meatball to get in front and block the darts. In that moment, Meatball's eyes glow with power as he steps forward to obey his summoner's command. He stomps the ground, unleashing a wave of energy, and jumps in the air with a deafening roar, a powerful taunt that draws the attention of every goblin in the area. And seeing all the goblins running away, a confused Cossack looks up as a massive shadow falls over him, and then comes crashing down in the middle of the horde, sending goblins flying. Even Cossack is caught in the shockwave, sent tumbling through the air by the force of the attack. Peeking from behind a rock, Jo-yuk is stunned to see how completely outmatched the goblins are, and as the remaining goblins ready their blowguns for a coordinated volley, a storm of poison darts rains down on Meatball, who simply declares, "Done work, tickles." And remembering his order to kill all, he begins to decimate the goblin horde with his bare hands. Jo-yuk realizes that based on combat prowess alone, Meatball is easily SR or SSR rank, concluding that the R rank must be solely because he is dumb. Back in his apartment, to celebrate their victory, he buys several boxes of fried chicken, and Meatball happily devours the kitchen as Jo-yuk praises him for his amazing performance. The celebration is interrupted by Cossack, who scolds him for mispronouncing chicken and eating too fast, leading Jo-yuk to wish they could just get along. Amidst the bickering, Meatball quietly states, "Summoner is good person," catching Jo-yuk by surprise. Touched, he tells him that a little chicken is nothing, and that he will be relying on him from now on. But the moment is ruined when Cossack smacks Meatball, correcting his pronunciation once again, which prompts our guy to yell at Cossack for bothering Meatball while he is eating, only for the assassin to point out that the barbarian is hogging all the food. The next day, the team enters the 17th floor of the tower, and just as they do, their traits and combat skills become available. Jo-yuk flexes, feeling an uncontrollable amount of power now that he has reached level 17. He feels his inner wild horse awakening, and gets overly excited to join the fray himself. Cossack quickly brings him back to reality, warning that level 20 is the perfect level to get complacent, while Meatball reminds him to stay back to live. The mission for the 17th floor is to eliminate 30 goblin warriors, and the team is confronted by a massive, organized army of armored goblin warriors. Jo-yuk notes that seeing the 90-strong, tactically skilled goblin army in person is far more intimidating than it was in strategy videos. He recalls the standard strategy, retreat to a safe zone, and wait for the goblins to scatter into patrols of 3 and then lure them out one group at a time, which he acknowledges that is also incredibly time-consuming. Discarding the slow approach, he calls out to his new powerhouse, declaring that he has no need for such a troublesome process and simply points forward, ordering him to go, which makes the barbarian deliver a roar that vibrates the air itself, ready for battle, as Joyuk considers how easily he can reach the 20th floor and beyond with his new summon. With a grin, he gives the final command to wipe them all out, already fantasizing about what his next perk will be. The barbarian warrior leaps into the goblin ranks, causing immediate chaos and confusion. The goblins cry out in alarm as the immense warrior descends upon them. In a futile attempt at defense, they form a tight phalanx, pointing their spears forward. However, Meatball effortlessly plows through their spear wall, completely unfazed by the attack, and then unleashes a powerful tackle, sending them flying in every direction. And the battlefield is left littered with the bodies of fallen goblins and their shattered weapons. Watching from a safe distance, Joyuk is thoroughly impressed by his insane performance, and thinks that the strategy and tactics only work when weight classes are similar. He then mentally compares the massive power gap to thousands of rental bikes trying to take on a battle tank. Unsurprisingly, their overwhelming victory earns them another S rank and a platinum badge. As Joyuk voices his admiration for Meatball, a disgruntled Cossack watches from the background, his jealousy reaching a new peak. The trio immediately proceeds to the 18th floor, where their next mission is to eliminate 30 stealthy goblin assassins. Sticking with his new strategy, Joyuk once again sends Meatball charging in first. However, this floor's monsters use stealth, emerging from the shadows to ambush them. And Meatball's brute force misses entirely, as the assassins are too nimble. As he looks around in confusion, Joyuk realizes this floor might not be so easy after all, and Meatball resorts to taunting the hidden enemies, yelling for the cowardly assassins to come out and fight. Just then, a burst of mocking laughter echoes through the forest, and Cossack steps forward, smugly offering to show them a classy strategy after witnessing Meatball's ignorant one. Activating his Shadow Step, he boasts that the goblin's stealth is no match for his superior speed, and he elegantly weaves through the stealthed goblins, dispatching them with deadly precision. Joyuk calls out to him, seemingly impressed by his display. However, his expression twists into a wicked grin as he reveals the deception that he fell for it. His plan was a success. By playing on his jealousy, he successfully instigated a competition between his two summons. And while his summons do the heavy lifting, he dreams of stacking up more platinum badges and powerful perks. Realizing he's already around level 18, he decides it's time to start participating more directly, and begins to power up, preparing to unleash what he calls his long-hidden technique. He then undergoes a bizarre transformation, gaining a horse's head as he dramatically announces Wild Horse Release. With that, he recalls the strategy info he checked before entering the floor, and knows the goblin's stealth is low level and believes he can detect their movements if he simply concentrates, confident that the Shadow Step practice from floor 15 will pay off. He appears behind a goblin, but then nearly trips over his own feet, and screams in panic as he begins to fall. But in a stroke of luck, his flailing mace collides with a goblin's head, which brings the team's total to 10. Sweating nervously, he tries to save face by claiming he caught the goblin exactly as intended. However, his moment of false pride is cut short as another goblin assassin ambushes him from above. Elsewhere, Cossack keeps cutting down multiple assassins, rapidly increasing the kill count. With only 3 goblins left, he prepares to finish the mission himself. However, Meatball suddenly appears, interrupting his attack, and unleashes a massive area of effect ground pound, and his attack instantly vaporizes several of the remaining goblin assassins, stealing the kills. An enraged Cossack tells him to get lost, but the simple-minded barbarian just states that he is helping. But amidst their bickering, he suddenly realizes their summoner is nowhere to be seen. Back to our guy, as the goblin's axe reaches his head. He manages to dodge it at the last moment, and clutches his head in relief, realizing his energy barrier perk just saved him from a fatal blow. As 2 more goblins close in, he finds himself cornered and on the defensive. However, fueled by an adrenaline rush, his perception sharpens, causing the enemy's movements to appear in slow motion. With newfound clarity, he easily dodges the coordinated slashes from the 2 assassins, and then capitalizing on the opening, he delivers a powerful crimson-tinged counterattack that finishes them both, which earns him yet another S rank. Moments later, Cossack finally finds him, calling out his name in concern. Joyuk, however, is ecstatic, proudly declaring that he got the last hit. His 2 summons can only watch as John falls to his knees in despair over his master's reckless celebration. And back at the Awakening Management Department, Manager Minna is stunned by the global announcement of an 18th consecutive S-clear. As Jian states that their player is unstoppable and prepared thoroughly, the director expresses his pride and desire to reveal his identity, but his team quickly reminds him how dangerous that would be. Jian emphasizes that this person is now a super special player, requiring even more careful management than the elite teams. News reports blast the unprecedented achievement across the country, rewriting the history of tower climbing in Korea, which ignites a nationwide obsession with discovering the identity of the mysterious S-player. Back at the apartment, a weary Kosak lets out a long, soul-crushing sigh, much to Jo-yuk's annoyance. When prompted to speak his mind, he admits his concern that Jo-yuk's progress is simply too fast. He is worried about the incredible speed at which his summoner is realizing and mastering his own talent. Jo-yuk is genuinely confused by the praise, unable to believe he is talking about him, and playfully dismisses the idea, insisting that he must be joking. But Kosak remains serious, wondering that his shadow step was a perfect technique that even he would struggle to mimic, making his rapid growth dangerous. He warns that as he gains confidence and starts having fun, the danger will increase, reminding him of their pact to prioritize self-preservation. Jo-yuk casually agrees, promising he won't do anything dangerous, though his expression suggests otherwise. But completely unconvinced, Kosak breaks down in tears, filled with dread that his overconfident summoner is destined to cause a major accident. As the argument continues, Meatball smugly looks down on the bawling assassin, calling him a moron. Enraged, Kosak launches himself at Meatball, vowing to boil the barbarian alive in a pot, and sends him crashing back into the fridge. As their fight sends food and appliances flying, their master watches in horror and forcefully unsummons both of his destructive companions, ordering them to stop destroying his house. Amidst the wreckage, he mourns the most tragic loss of all, the precious kimchi his mother had given him. Exhausted by the chaos, he decides that a visit to his parents' home is in order to clear his head. Therefore, the next morning, he makes his way up the stairs of his parents' apartment building. As he enters the apartment and announces his arrival to his family, his father's voice warmly welcomes him inside. And as he finds his dad laid up in a medical bed, he asks about his hip, while his father nags him for not visiting more often. Despite the family's protests, his father insists on getting up, complaining that his bones won't heal if he just lies around all day. And as his mom invites him to eat some stew, he learns his younger brother Min-yuk is out buying tofu. A delicious home-cooked meal awaits him at the dinner table. Over dinner, he asks if things are tough at home these days, to which his parents tell him not to worry about and to just focus on living his own life well. Seeing his family's struggles, he decides to test their reaction by casually wishing he could awaken as a player. Hearing that, his father immediately latches onto the comment, making him panic that he's been too obvious. However, he just bursts out laughing alongside his brother, calling it the funniest joke he has ever made, and the father mocking the very idea of someone like his son entering the tower. And when his mother asks about his job, he lies about having the day off, internally admitting he's already quit all his part-time jobs. But her sharp intuition kicks in, and she calls him out on the lie, noting that his face always gives him away. Despite her suspicions, she offers a warm smile, affirming that she trusts her son completely. Her trust, however, comes with a stern warning to never ever use loan sharks, which sends a jolt of panic through him. The warning triggers a horrific flashback to the news report on the fate of the loan sharks Kosak had dealt with. Changing the subject, he learns his mom was fired after she stood up to a rude customer, refusing to be treated like a maid. He reflects on his mother's brave personality and his father's proudest achievement, successfully asking her out on a date. A comical diagram then illustrates how his father, the real beta male, passed down his pathetic but strong genes to his two sons. And seeing how worried his parents are, he decides to keep his awakening a secret for now. Before leaving, he hands a bankbook to his younger brother Min-yuk, telling him it's allowance for their parents and asks him to make sure that they do not overwork themselves. And as he begins to leave, his brother asks him to wait. Our guy assumes that his little brother must be feeling guilt as he paid his tuition last time, and considers his silence as shyness and pats him on the shoulder, stating that he knows how he feels. However, Min-yuk cheekily points out that if their parents are getting an allowance, he should get his share too. Irritated, Jo-yuk calls him a brat but promptly transfers 500,000 won to his brother's account. His family visit having renewed his determination, he arrives at the Awakening Management Department. Looking up at the massive building, he strengthens his resolve to succeed as a player for them. And as he decides to visit the player shop, brushing off the manager's request to be contacted in advance, he knows that as he climbs higher, the monsters will get stronger, making better defensive gear a necessity. A shop employee shows him a powerful, high-end shield, but the price is an astronomical 100 million won, which leaves him utterly speechless and wide-eyed with shock. Overwhelmed by the cost and his own social anxiety, he awkwardly turns down the shield, claiming it's too heavy. The employee then cheerfully offers a more suitable alternative, a small, self-repairing hand shield for a much lower price, which immediately impresses him, finding it to be a perfect match for his mace, and he nervously agrees to purchase the shield for 40 million won. With the payment complete, he is now the proud owner of a brand new shield. Still, he internally laments that talking to the female staff member was somehow more difficult than fighting goblins. With his shopping complete, a satisfied Jo-yuk turns to leave the store. But as he heads for the exit, a man casually leaning against a pillar calls out, guessing that he is a new player. He extends a hand and introduces himself as a fellow player named Choi Ho-seok. After they shake hands, Ho-seok reveals he's a high-level player climbing the 30th floors, making our guy feel small when he admits he's only in the 10s. Still, he finds the high-level player surprisingly kind and easygoing, especially when he offers to help him if he ever gets stuck. And Ho-seok cheerfully reiterates his offer of assistance, telling Jo-yuk to ask him for help anytime. Watching the confident player leave, Jo-yuk can't help but feel a little envious of his high level and social grace. Back at his apartment that night, our protagonist prepares for his next tower run. He checks his status, noting he's now level 19 and ready to challenge the 19th floor. But first, he sets out a box of king dumplings, planning to make a peace offering to Kosak. He then summons his assassin, whose mood suddenly changes on arrival, and he falls on the ground, horrified that his master is enjoying this now, and he even got a shield. Kosak expresses his deep concern, recalling a previous summoner who also started with caution but became reckless, but Jo-yuk insists he'll run at the first sign of trouble. But still unconvinced, he makes him promise that he won't charge into battle ahead of his summons. And Jo-yuk enthusiastically agrees, and Kosak asks to sacrifice him and Meatball to escape if necessary, a plan our guy finds surprisingly agreeable. Just as they're about to set off, a scent grabs our assassin's attention. It's the king dumplings Jo-yuk bought specifically for him, a gesture meant to increase his loyalty. Kosak is visibly moved that his master would think of him before even considering Meatball, and, just as he joyfully prepares to dig into the meal, he questions if Jo-yuk has a grudge against anyone, causing him to pause his meal, and explaining that he senses someone with powerful killing intent standing just outside their door. A knock echoes through the apartment as an unfamiliar voice calls out, sending a chill down his spine. Reacting instantly, he tells Kosak to hide and activates his energy barrier just in time. Just then, someone shoots the door lock and sends it rolling down to our guy. Then, the door creaks open to reveal a silhouetted figure holding a gun, who offers a chillingly casual greeting. The intruder is none other than Choi Ho-seok from the player shop, who grins maniacally, revealing he's been following him the whole time. Jo-yuk asks him to put his weapon away, but he threatens him at gunpoint, ordering him to hand over his player bracelet and open his inventory. With the gun pressed to his forehead, our guy wonders what was he thinking, pointing a weapon at him. Enraged by the defiance, Ho-seok fails to notice the shadowy, menacing figure of Kosak appears behind him, realizing far too late that threatening this particular summoner is suicide. Losing his patience, Ho-seok raises his pistol to strike, threatening to beat the young man to death if he doesn't hand over his items immediately. But just as he was about to beat him, Kosak smashes the backside of his weapon on his head. Before losing his consciousness, he wonders where did the other person come from, and with a single, precise hit on the head, the assassin instantly neutralizes the threat, dropping the would-be robber to the floor. Jo-yuk watches in stunned silence as the dangerous situation is resolved in a flash. Snapping out of his daze, he showers his summoned assassin with praise for a job well done, and expresses his relief, admitting he was worried Kosak might thoughtlessly kill the man like some thoughtless, trashy thug. And now that the danger has passed, he deduces that Ho-seok must be a notorious item broker, and recalls that these dangerous players hunt and kill others outside the tower just to steal their equipment. Remembering Jian's warning about the dangers players face even in the real world, while Elite Team has a personal protection outside the tower, our protagonist realizes with a shudder that if not for his unique ability to summon companions anywhere, he would have been completely helpless. And while he reflects on his overpowered ability, a gleeful Kosak is already preparing a red ribbon, ready to perform his signature finishing touch. But Jo-yuk quickly shuts down the assassin's offer to dispose of the man, insisting that they'll simply report the incident to the police. Meanwhile, across town, Director Park is alarmed to learn that Player Bong has visited the player shop yet again. Team leader Jian confirms that he only bought a small buckler, lamenting that he could have given him a full set of top-tier gear if only he had signed the elite contract. Based on his recent purchases, they consider him to be a melee type, which means even a full set of protective gear would not be enough for him. So Jian resolves to cook up some excuse to provide player Bong with a full set of armor for his own protection. But his thoughts are cut short by an urgent call from the police player task force. He then takes the call, formally identifying himself to the authorities on the other end, and the news he receives leaves him utterly speechless and horrified. Without a moment's hesitation, he screeches out of the office parking lot in a complete panic, and sprints up the stairs toward Jo-yuk's apartment, fearing the absolute worst has happened. Consumed by regret, he berates himself for not getting the elite contract signed sooner, terrified of what he might find. Back in the apartment, police officers are arresting a dazed Hoseok for home invasion and aggravated robbery. But he desperately tries to flip the script, claiming he's the victim, while a flustered Jo-yuk insists that the other man is the one who broke in, so the police also demands for homeowner to go with them, which give him a terrifying vision of a future behind bars. But just as they're about to be led away, Jian bursts through the doorway to intervene. Believing he's been saved, an ecstatic Hoseok recognizes the team leader from the department, and immediately continues his false narrative, claiming that Jo-yuk kidnapped him and tried to steal his items. But instead of saving him, Jian delivers a furious, resounding slap across the robber's face. Stunned and bleeding, he can only ask why he was hit. Yet Jian explodes with rage, shouting at the man for daring to attack another player before revoking his player registration on the spot. Hoseok is left dumbfounded as the enraged team leader completely ignores his side of the story. Jian then informs the police that the National Intelligence Service will handle the interrogation, a threat that terrifies Hoseok, who knows of their brutal methods. The man drops to his knees and begs for mercy, but Jian coldly informs him that they already know he's a repeat offender, and sarcastically tells the criminal to find a lawyer, doubting anyone would not be willing to represent him. As Hoseok is restrained, the team leader reminds the officers of the player arrest manual, which is designed to prevent players from using the tower to escape justice, which is that he will reappear in the same spot again. Turning his full, intimidating attention to Jo-yuk, Jian's face contorts with concern as he asks if he was hurt. He then formally addresses him as Player Bong and bows deeply in a sincere apology, promising to ensure his safety from now on. Internally, Jian strengthens his resolve. He must get Jo-yuk to sign the elite contract and protect him at all costs. The next day, Jo-yuk explains to Kosak that the robber was taken by the police, prompting the bloodthirsty assassin to ask if that means he's getting the death penalty. And when his assassin casually asks for the location of the detention center, he sternly orders him to forget he ever heard of it. After that, he summons the barbarian, who is adorably proud of himself for learning how to count. With that, the trio enters the 19th floor of the Black Tower, where their mission is to defeat 30 goblin shamans. These shamans are described as relatively weak, relying mostly on non-lethal curses and minor attack magic. Confident in his team, Jo-yuk feels there's nothing to worry about as Meatball charges headfirst into the enemy ranks. The goblin horde cackles as they unleash a volley of dark, swirling curses at the approaching barbarian. However, the barbarian stopped to take in a lot of air, and with a single earth-shaking roar, he shatters all the curses with the sound. And Jo-yuk can only watch in amazement at such an unconventional method for dispelling magic. Seeing his opening, Kosak appears from behind, and reminds Meatball the plan to clear the floor as quickly as possible, a command the barbarian eagerly confirms. And so, they charge forward in unison, ready to decimate the goblin forces. In a blur of motion, they effortlessly carve a path through the bewildered goblin shamans. Not wanting to be left out, our guy equips his new gear and prepares to finally join the battle himself. But before he can even land a single blow, the mission completion alert appears, signaling that his summons have already finished the job. As he can only stare at the backs of his two companions, Kosak's cheerful gloating makes him realize that he's been had because they intentionally finished so quickly just to keep him out of the fight, and their incredible speed once again earns them an S rank and another valuable platinum badge. The next day, the team enters the dreaded 20th floor, a level infamous among players for its atrocious difficulty. Kosak warns his master that this floor is exceptionally dangerous, as it features every single type of goblin imaginable. Both of them insist that their summoner should wait in a safe place while they handle the combat. The mission objective is to defeat 100 assorted goblins and 1 hobgoblin, all within a 10-hour time limit. Tired of being sidelined, our guy wonders if they plan on boxing him out of the fight again. Ignoring him, Kosak lays out the plan. Meatball will draw all the enemy aggression, creating an opening for an attack. As the barbarian charges, he is immediately met with a barrage of curses, arrows, and spears from a diverse goblin army. While the ranged attacks focus on Meatball, stealthy goblin assassins materialize from the shadows to strike. However, Jo-yuk scoffs at the idea that such an obvious tactic would ever work on him. Hence, using his sidestep technique, he dashes towards Meatball. And while using his broad back as a springboard, he declares that he is going ahead, and recklessly throws himself over the front line, and deep into the heart of the Goblin army, which makes Cossack scream in pure terror as he watches his master make such a potentially fatal move. A flashback reveals a young Bong Joo-yuk, who was introverted even as a child and often played by himself. Suddenly, another child aggressively snatches the toy truck he was playing with, and gleefully runs off with it, leaving a stunned Jo-yuk behind. But his social isolation worsened in elementary school, where poverty made him a target for bullies who cruelly label him a rent beggar. And in middle school, he was a loner once again, which continued into high school, where he ate lunch by himself, cementing his life as a social outcast who was too afraid to change. He reflects that he never imagined someone like him, who couldn't even make eye contact with delinquents, would one day be fighting monsters. However, the monsters aren't people, they're just like game mobs, devoid of the social fears that have always plagued him. So he just needs to crush them and get the reward. However, watching from afar, John Cossack screams in horror as his master charges recklessly ahead. In the next moment, a horde of spear-wielding goblin warriors rushes forward to meet his advance. But Jo-yuk expertly dodges their initial assault, weaving through their ranks with surprising agility. He then closes in on a goblin marksman and slams his mace into its head, ending its life. He then continues his rampage, effortlessly finishing off multiple goblins with his enhanced speed and strength, which shocks Cossack that he is already using the advanced Shadow Walker skill with such proficiency. Suddenly, the assassin notices a volley of projectiles heading straight for Jo-yuk and screams a warning, and he raises his shield just in time, blocking a hail of darts coming at his face, and the rest are deflected by his energy barrier, which makes him realize that his energy barrier is the only thing that saved him from being turned into a pincushion. And as the reality of the danger hits him, he begins to panic, wondering if he got too carried away. Now on the run, he desperately screams for help from his summons, and Cossack immediately responds, asking him to move towards the cliff. Meatball also roars into action, singularly focused on protecting his master. Jo-yuk pushes himself to the limit, his stamina draining rapidly as the goblin horde pursues him relentlessly. Then he spots his destination, a look of desperate hope on his face. Upon reaching a cliff's edge, he breathlessly asks if they've arrived, and panics for a moment, realizing the cliff is a dead end and there's nothing there. Cornered against the cliff wall, he frantically deflects goblin spears and believes he's about to die. But just as the goblins are about to land a final blow, Meatball's massive hand appears, shielding him from the spear thrusts. The giant barbarian then stands as a formidable wall between his summoner and the terrified goblins. In the blink of an eye, he unleashes his power, smashing them into the ground with a single devastating blow. Meanwhile, Cossack finishes off the last of the goblin assassins and dashes towards the top of the cliff, where the remaining goblin shamans prepare their own attack. But Cossack instantly appears in front of them, and swiftly executes the two, ending the threat from above. Standing over the defeated monsters, he wonders if it is just about done, and confirms that they've caught all 100 goblins, anticipating the next phase. As Jo-yuk can still only watch in awe for the 20th time at how quickly his two summons cleared out the entire horde. He cautiously asks Meatball to move forward, still unnerved by the barbarian's sheer size. Suddenly, a rumbling sound catches his attention, signaling a new arrival. The final boss of the floor appears, a hobgoblin, the final evolution of its kind. Without a moment's hesitation, Cossack dashes towards the new threat. As the assassin leaps into the air, he calls out to Gobong, the nickname he gave Meatball, and Meatball lets out a mighty roar, signaling that he'll handle it. The barbarian easily catches the hobgoblin's sword strike with his bare hand, and grabs it from its neck, making it growl in anger. Diving down from above, Cossack tells him to hold the boss tight, and plunges his dual blades into its eye sockets. Hence, the boss is instantly defeated in a spray of purple blood, and the system messages confirm the 20th floor mission is complete, awarding him a level up, mana stones, and healing potions. Cossack then praises his work, while Jo-yuk privately admits it's better to leave the fighting to his powerful summons. He formally thanks his summons for protecting him, and they both bow in loyalty. With that, an official notice announces that Bong Joo-yuk has achieved an S rank for clearing the 20th floor of the Black Tower, and as his reward, he receives another platinum badge before exiting. News of the 20th consecutive S rank spreads like wildfire, and the public speculates wildly about the player's identity. Director Park Kyung-soo acknowledges that while the record is impressive, the intense public focus is becoming troublesome. He rejects the idea of controlling the press, fearing it would leak that the department already knows the ranker's identity. and then asks about the player's family situation, having ordered a discreet investigation. Jean reports that the player's father, Bong Soo-seol, is in rehabilitation after hip surgery from an accident. Director Park approves a plan to introduce the father to the best rehabilitation center in the country, fully paid for by the department. The investigation also revealed a younger brother, Bong Min-hyuk, a university freshman, for whom they plan to offer scholarship support. Finally, he reports on the mother, Hong Jum-ja, who was recently fired after a conflict with an abusive customer. He advises that the mother is the most important person to win over, as she holds the most influence in the family. Director Park approves the plan and orders his team to execute it, using the department's full authority to support the player's family. Back at the apartment, Kosak's keen senses pick up the smell of a food delivery, and Meatball excitedly chants about the tasty delivery, much to his summoner's exasperation. He quickly throws a blanket over the giant barbarian and tells Kosak to hide as he goes to answer the door. The delivery man is impressed by the huge order of 12 tang suyuk and 12 jjajangmyeon, and adds a fried dumpling as a freebie. After the man leaves, our guy can't help but feel that one free dumpling for such a massive order is a bit stingy. However, he's surprised to find not one, but a huge stack of coupons under the bowls, and laments that even with all these coupons, he's never been in a financial position to actually use them. With the coast clear, Meatball emerges from under the blanket, overwhelmed by the incredible smell of jjajangmyeon. Joyuk asks the drooling barbarian if he's ever had this dish before. And as Meatball dives into the meal, Kosak protests about his table manners, but Joyuk tells them both to eat while he checks on something. While his summons feast, he opens his inventory to check his latest rewards. And a system notification confirms that a new perk will be provided for accumulating 20 platinum badges, which makes him marvel at reaching his 20th platinum badge, and he eagerly wonders what the new perk will be. With that, a glowing golden question mark block appears, announcing the perk, one random box. And he stares in shock and confusion, wondering what a random box could possibly be. Examining the massive list of potential rewards from the IT, he is overwhelmed by the sheer number of possible items and decides to just skim the list, since it's all random anyway. He mentally dismisses common items like mana stones, herbs, metals, weapons, and armor as unexciting. While weighing the pros and cons, he decides a level up rune is far superior to a tower jumping ticket, which would make him miss out on clear rewards. A multinational tower access ticket catches his eye, but he continues searching for the absolute best possible prize. Finally, he locks onto a grade confirmation summon ticket, which guarantees an SR, SSR, or even an LSSR summon. He fantasizes about getting an LSSR summon, imagining a life of luxury where he can just relax while his overpowered summon clears the tower for him. Grinning greedily, he focuses on the fact that he gets 3 random items, hoping the odds are in his favor. And with a desperate plea to the universe, he activates the random box, promising to live a virtuous life if he gets something good. The random box activates, glowing intensely as it prepares to reveal its contents. And he watches with wide-eyed anticipation, eager to see the results of his first big gamble. The first item is revealed, a 10 Calidrium Mana Stone. Dejected, Joyuk calls it a dud, though he begrudgingly admits it's still worth 5 million won. Shaking off the disappointment, he moves on to open the second box. The second item is a success, as he acquires the Primordial Thunderstaff skill, noting its wuxia-style name. And with growing excitement, he reaches for the final box, hoping his luck holds, which is revealed to be a summon grade-up rune, realizing he's hit the jackpot with this incredible find. The system confirms that he can now increase the grade of one of his summons, which makes him reflect that this rune was one of the items he wanted the most, as it can upgrade a summon to a higher tier like SR or SSR. But now, he faces a dilemma. Should he upgrade the SR rank Kosak or the R rank Meatball, who are currently bickering over food? But in the end, he leans towards upgrading Kosak, fondly remembering all the bowls of rice they've shared as his first companion. Still, he jokes to himself that perhaps Meatball has eaten more rice, but his decision seems made. The summon grade-up rune's description explains that it increases a summon's grade based on their potential. Deciding there's no rush to use the rune since his team's firepower is already sufficient, he plans to give it to Kosak later. For now, he decides it's more important to test out his newly acquired skill, and examines the description for Primordial Thunderstaff, noting it's a growth-type skill that imbues a weapon with lightning. Pleased that he finally has a much-needed attack skill, he eagerly chooses to acquire it. And as the skill's first form, Soul-Chasing Thunderbolt, is unlocked, he feels the knowledge of how to use it being transferred directly into his brain. Eager to test it out, he summons a mace to try the new skill, and instantly swings it, calling out the skill's name. However, the skill fizzles out, producing no effect in his apartment. which reminds him again that tower skills can't be used in the real world, and decides he'll have to test it later inside the tower. And as confused Cossack asks why he's suddenly swinging a mace around, and he explains that he got a new skill as a perk. Additionally, when he asks if it's an attack skill, Jo-yuk proudly confirms that it's even a growth type skill, which strikes him like a lightning strike, dropping his noodles as he imagines the danger his reckless master will now put himself in. But the tense moment is broken when Meatball snatches his fallen noodles and stuffs them in his mouth, which ends up into battle between the two, demanding he spit out the last bowl of noodles, but the warrior refuses. Tired of their antics, Jo-yuk unsummons both of them. The next day, he sits in his room pondering Cossack's intense worry about his new skill. He reflects on the nature of his summoning trait. Typically, a summoner's own combat power is negligible compared to their summons, making them reliant on others for fighting. And for an irregular like him, who can summon powerful beings in the real world, this dependency is even more pronounced. He thinks about Cossack's previous master from a parallel universe, realizing that Summoner must have been much stronger than him. Yet, despite that strength, his predecessor died and his world was destroyed. He also acknowledges that Cossack's extreme caution is understandable given his past trauma. But with a newfound taste of power, his pride as a real man compels him to use the attack skill he just learned. Confident he can persuade them, he summons both his companions. And both of them, Meatball, are designated as his summoned beings. A worried and haggard-looking Cossack appears, still shivering from their previous discussion. He confesses he was already anxious about his master getting an attack skill, which he saw as a potential poison, and sternly warns Jo-yuk that while goblins might be manageable, orcs are a completely different and far more dangerous threat. As Meatball slowly moves in the background, the assassin apologizes in advance for the mortal sin he's about to commit, and invokes Summon Principle Article 3, overriding his master's will for the sake of his safety. The principle states that when a summoner's command conflicts with their safety, protecting the summoner's life takes top priority. Hence, Meatball instantly grabs his summoner. But Cossack gives him a smack in the head and orders him to grab and hold their master once they enter the tower. With Meatball assigned to keep Jo-yuk safe, Cossack announces he will handle clearing the floor alone, leaving our protagonist to realize his summons have conspired against him. Seeing no other choice, he resigns himself to using his last resort, and unleashes his ultimate move, the Sad Eyes attack, tearfully begging Cossack to trust him just this once. He makes a flurry of promises, swearing he won't run off alone and just wants to catch one monster slowly and cautiously. But Cossack struggles against the plea, torn between his duty to protect and his master's desperate request. Jo-yuk beams with relief as our assassin finally relents, but with a firm warning that he will intervene at the first sign of danger. With the deal struck, Jo-yuk and Cossack give a celebratory ching. The trio then successfully enters the 21st floor of the Black Tower, and Cossack briefs his team that orcs are strong but stupid, adding they're still probably smarter than Meatball, who protests indignantly. Eager to practice his new skill, our protagonist suggests a few warm-up swings before they start, to which Cossack cheekily offers up Meatball as a live training dummy, encouraging his master to whack him. With Meatball volunteering and Cossack goading him, an overwhelmed Jo-yuk threatens to charge in alone, forcing them to back down. Sighing, he decides it's better to practice on a real orc since the skill usage is already in his head. The 21st floor mission is displayed: defeat 30 forest orcs within 4 hours. Just then, a horde of ferocious forest orcs emerges from the trees, ready for battle. Before Jo-yuk can act, both Cossack and Meatball declare they're going first and charge into the fray, and the two powerful summons launch themselves into the orc horde like cannonballs. Meatball lands with explosive force, sending orcs flying with a single punch. At the same time, Cossack carves through the enemy ranks with lightning-fast slashes. Jo-yuk watches in shock at the incredible speed at which his summons are decimating the orcs, which panics him, realizing that at this rate, the floor will be cleared before he even gets a chance to fight. Suddenly, our assassin uses a skill to launch himself into the air, clearing a path, and lands perfectly in front, an orc. Seeing that Cossack has perfectly set up a target for him, a grateful Jo-yuk readies his attack. He launches himself forward, channeling energy into his mace. As his attack nears, the orc turns to face the incoming threat, and Cossack swiftly moves behind the orc, ready to intervene if anything goes wrong. And as the orc swings his axe at him, he uses Shadow Step to evade it at the last moment and recalls that the soul-chasing Thunderbolt is a simple vertical strike. After which, he raises his mace high, the weapon crackling with golden lightning, and the Primordial Thunderstaff skill fully activates, channeling immense power. Jo-yuk then brings it down on the orc's head, unleashing the first form soul-chasing Thunderbolt, and the powerful strike connects, smashing directly into the orc's skull. and a look of pure satisfaction spreads across his face as he learns that his new weapon's power is absolutely not weak.